You have to bring community in. You really do. We've got to lower the walls between school and community. When you do bring that community member in, you've got to be humble as an educator. School really is a community place, but for some reason, we've started to detach our curriculum from the community. And in many ways, we got to rebuild that.
Hello and welcome to the Future is Clear, Teach Like It's 2045 webcast series. My name is Scott Carr from CESA 2. Today's topic area is transforming your school district, why we need to do something different. Joining us today is Peter Hostrawser from Naperville School District. Welcome, Peter. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I can't wait. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Peter has been in education for 23 years. Currently, he is the career internship educator and coordinator at Naperville School District 203 in Naperville, Illinois. Over his career, Peter has successfully grown businesses and internship programs at 6 different school districts, where these programs and participation has drastically increased. Peter is also the founder and co-host of Disrupt Education podcast, where they've had nearly 350 podcasts thus far. And I think I might have been number 341.
I think so.
I don't remember, but that's an awful lot of podcasts, I'd say, Peter. That's really cool. You've become a good friend. I'm super excited about having you join us today and talk a little bit about all things career, community, life readiness. So welcome, Peter.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Actually, we just dropped 350 today, which just it was Kevin Fleming. So he's our guest on our 350th. So yeah, you're right on the dime today.
Super cool. Super cool. Yeah, I know. That's how we kind of met, right? Through the podcast, right? All the different podcasts that you've done. But I heard you on Sylvester Chisholm's podcast a while back.
Yeah.
Reached out right away. And that's where you had talked about having your own podcast and was able to get on it. Yeah. You've got some great topics and content on there. Super excited going through all that and learning a lot from those podcasts. Really appreciate it. Yeah. So how's the school year starting for you?
It's great. This is a new year and a new place for me. This is actually my 6th or 7th, I think, 6th high school district that I've been in, and they are ahead of the curve here. And it's been an exciting couple of months. I basically jumped in at the end of June into July. My counterpart, Brett Thompson, who is the other coordinator for the career internship program here, has done a lot of stuff on his own, and now we're just teaming up and making things happen. So it's been a great start. It's been I can't believe it's like at the end of September already. So
yeah. I knew you had a lot on your plate because when we first met, we talked a little bit, and I knew something was up because we had talked about me coming and visiting at your old school.
Right.
I didn't hear from you for a while. And I finally reached out again and took on a new position. I'm like, oh, okay. Moving into something new, that transition takes a little bit of time. Yeah. I wanted to let everybody know that this is being recorded and that you can find this recording on my newsletter. And then also we'll share this out through our YouTube account also. And as you're listening, those that are here with us, we got a few people. If you have any questions, just go ahead and drop that in the chat, and we'll try to answer those. So let's dive into it. Let's get started here. Tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you get where you're at? A little bit about why you've decided to move into this education process in that journey.
Right. It can be a long one. I'll try to keep it short, but I think that's a very important question for anybody who gets into education. And it's a good place to kind of rebalance yourself when, you're feeling burnt out like we all do. So yeah, my dad told me never to become a teacher because of politics. He was a math educator. a football coach. As a matter of fact, he's got a football field named after him in Walkerton, Indiana, John Glenn High School, one of two John Glenn High Schools. The other one's in Ohio. Yeah, I mean, I tried everything. I knew how to play the game in education. I got the grades. I didn't do too well on test scores and things like that, but I went through and got my degree in communication broadcast journalism, and I had an internship my senior year at a radio station, and I was like, what the heck am I doing here? I did not like it at all. And then I started questioning, why did I even do all of this? And I had no idea like what my skills were. I didn't really like set up goals. Frankly, I didn't even have a resume all the way through my college career. But kind of going back into that, I am a part of a family of entrepreneurs. I have my two grandfathers now deceased. One is a veterinarian, was a veterinarian, and he owned his own practice. It wasn't like they are now. And my other one was a five and dime store guy who basically served in World War II, almost died, came back, and learned how to do the five and dime store stuff, pre-Walmart. And he worked with Woolworths, which is an old school kind of Midwest place. And he learned everything, and then he started his own. It was Harvey's Dime Stores. So him and his brothers, his one brother, became basically the buyer and the seller, and they had about 25 stores at the top, and I would always like, how did you do this?
Wow.
So coming back into education, I bounced around. I did all kinds of different things, but I think the one thing that landed me was my wife now, but she was my girlfriend at the time, was an elementary school teacher. She's a reading specialist now at the primary level. And I was doing video production at the time, and they wanted me to teach the kids, a handful of kids, how to do weekly announcements on the old VHS, SVHS systems. Dating myself here, but so they gave me some kids, man. They gave me some really great educational academic kids, and then they gave me kids who are like, I just want them out of the classroom. This kid needs to do something else, third through fifth graders. And the teachers came back after a couple of weeks working with me, and they were like, how is Johnny getting better at math? How is Susie understanding reading and writing better? And it was because they were applying it. They were actually on camera. They were doing the editing. They were doing the work. And that was it. That was a check mark right there. I'm like, I got to bring this into classrooms because I didn't have it. So that's the opening.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? So you noticed, how long ago was this?
That was, oh man, I'm going to date myself, probably almost 29 years ago.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Off on yourself, by yourself with a bunch of kids, being able to recognize how impactful, like real world application, and being able to do that with kids,
Right.
and the impact that it has. But yet, right, we've continued that grind over time, that it's about achievement, it's about academics, it's about learning the academics first. So wow, that's really, really cool. So one of the things I think I admire about you is that I would say that you identify as an untraditional educator. I think kind of that, since I've gotten to know you, right? It's just down last week, visit with you, and I'm like, yeah, boy, we share a brain. And outside the box thinker, right? You like to challenge, you like to disrupt, right? You like to go fast, move fast. So why do you think there's a need for change in our educational system?
I think there's a need because it's life in general is moving faster than our education system. And even when I was in the education system, there were a lot of assets there that I didn't really know about that I wish I knew about. But I think that in certain instances, there's schools that are doing a lot of different things, but why do we still need to teach students how to, shoe a horse when we have self-driving cars? You know what I'm saying? That's kind of the way I look at it. the world is changing. We have AI now. We have all these different things that are coming at us, but yet we're still in many ways, not always, but in many ways, we're still trying to fight against it. And life isn't supposed to be easier. It's supposed to be difficult. But I just see it like there's so many pieces that are outdated that we still do because that's the way we've always done it. But today, I mean, we're going to talk about some changes that have been made. So there
Yeah.
is a tide moving. That's how we met.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we really need to ask the tough questions, and I feel like we need to not only ask the tough questions, but we're beyond just kind of realizing that the education system is struggling. We are at the point of action, and there is some action out there, but I still see it as a challenge to we got to try to at least keep up with 75% of life here. If
Right.
education system can do that, I think we're getting there. So
Yeah.
it's a learning journey, right? So, but yeah, we haven't changed. I mean, in some cases, I mean, you just heard the bell go off here. I mean, we're still hitting bells at the secondary level that are 7, 8 periods. And guess 35, 40 years ago when I was in high school, it's the same thing. Why are we doing it that way? But I'm going to share some different things today that are happening. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's why.
Appreciate it. And I got that understanding a little bit when I came down and visited last week.
Yeah.
You and Brett, and as we met as a team, you're really putting together at least some really thought, moving forward. How can we shift? And also, let our audience know how big Naperville High School, two high schools, right?
Right. Yeah. We are a K through 12 district,
Okay.
which, believe it or not, around Chicago in the suburbs is not all that common at the closer you get. So it's kind of still the old school high school and then junior high.
Hmm.
So there'll be two districts, but this is a K through 12 district. There are two high schools. We got about 5,000 5,200 kids in Naperville Central and Naperville North combined in the high school. There are 20, I think 26 schools overall that are in this district.
Yeah. So, which is amazing, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
size of your two high schools.
yeah,
We have some big high schools in our state, but I deal with a lot of high schools that are at the 500, total
yep.
student range. So you shifting and doing what you're doing and attempting to do what you're doing is amazing, in regards to two high schools that size. So let's talk a little bit about like what it is. And I know you've done some really amazing things in the previous schools that you've been in, around work-based learning, if we call it that, right? So,
Mhm.
and I know it's had some really, really great impact. So tell our listeners here a little bit about some of those things. What have you done? What are some of the things that you've done in the past that have had the greatest impact?
Right. Yeah. There's so many, and most of them are dealing with students and community really being a part of it, no matter how big or small the school is. I actually graduated with 93 students.
Yeah.
So I am from a
Same.
rural district and I understand it, right? So some of the things that, some of your listeners are going to hear here, like, we can't do that. But I really am going to challenge everybody to think, okay, so how can we do it? Like, don't focus on the negative, focus on the positive. And I think that's one thing that in a couple of these stories I'm about to share is we focus more on not the blockers, but what we could do. So for instance, one of the things that I'm very happy with the team that I work with at Oak Park or Forest High School is we developed it was a different way of looking at their business program. We had a lot of students who would go off to colleges and universities and junior colleges and even into the business world, but they weren't taking a business class in high school. So they were missing out on a lot of things. So one of the things we did is we just looked at the collegiate or the MBA model, and then we scaled it to a high school. We renamed our entire department.
Oh,
Some people didn't like it, but hey, we named it the OPRF School of Business because guess what? You want to go whatever, you can say Indiana University and, Whitewater, whatever. They all have something that is a school of business or a school of whatever, engineering. So we just modeled it to kind of label it. And then what we did is we started to do what we call here at Naperville, but we didn't really call it this, but they were team-based challenges where we would bring in companies and they would actually work with our students. I just get out of their way. So that was one thing. And we basically doubled the size of that department, but it wasn't all about just growing the department. It was about giving these kids chances to see and experience authentic learning, even if we didn't leave the building. So that was one, building a lot of different areas in like design thinking, really trying to think about how clients walk through something. So somebody who needs value, who has a need, and it can be with anything, but I'm coming at it from a business lens, but we raised over $100,000 for charitable organizations by working with that charity and, writing grants for printing T-shirts and then selling T-shirts or auctioning them off. And our kids ran the whole thing. And there were some competitions in there as well. That was all at Oak Park. Working at Stagg, where I was before in District 230, great district, their internship program is where we kind of built a lot there. We had a lot of great people in the community who were coming in and helping us figure out different things. So we built a board there of community members. We would go out and talk to businesses and say, what do you guys need? What are you looking at? What are the skills? And we were building onto a co-op program where, it didn't really matter what the pathway was. It was just like, we just want to give these things to students and let them experience it. For instance, we had Robert Peplowski of Peppo Subs. He came in and he was about to expand, and they were building a second and now a third and fourth location. He taught the kids economies of scale, but he actually had the kids do research for him, create a website for him. Those types of things are just small things, but the students really got that hands-on and it meant something. There's a why behind it. So, I can go on and on about these things, but when you give kids, especially this generation, authentic pieces to where they can kind of show what they know, your programs are gonna grow and people are gonna get on board. It's just, consistency of working with whoever your community is.
Right. And the real life experiences that our students are able to get invested and involved in, those skills that they need to really grow and embrace, those durable skills naturally take place and happen, right? I mean, think of the number of years that we used to look at teaching social skills in the classroom.
Right.
And I mean, and we you stumbled across this many years ago in regards to how students can grow with that real world application. So you talked a little bit here about your internship program, internship class, and I was able to see it firsthand last week. I think it's some amazing work that you're doing. It's somewhat comparable to what we do in our state around youth apprenticeship, but talk a little bit about that, and also talk about how have you in the past, how are you looking at doing this at Naperville of generating some interest and gaining that momentum to kind of duplicate that success that you've had?
Yeah, I'll be honest, and I'm a White Sox fan. We're having trouble this year, but I feel like I'm playing for the Yankees, to be honest. So, I will give all credit to 203 and myself for like kind of coming together. And I am blessed to be a part of a team that is out front. So I'm going to preface it with that. What this district does is there's our career internship program is a little bit different than a lot of the other ones that are the old school co-op programs, which are great, but they can be better. So what happened was a few years back, or could be 10 years back, the co-op program here was dropped, right? And it was very academically kind of focused. And the state of Illinois set up a CTE pathway endorsement for students. And it's one of the best things that I've ever seen come out of State Board of Education. A lot of different states have done this, but they're very intent on getting kids challenges in the classroom, and then also giving them an endorsement to where they can find their skills in an actual place where they're interested at that time, right? So the pathway. What we do here is there's a career awareness piece. So because we're a K through 12 district, our eighth grade, all our eighth graders go through a thing called Motive 8. So they kind of crafted that together, where they have over 100 participants around the area come in, and it is a little bit of a career fair, but it's more, right? It's where there's hands-on things, there's a little bit of activities, and the kids are exposed to that. So that's their first kind of career exploration, career awareness piece. And then as they come through high school, they start to dig deeper into, what are the classes that I can take or I want to take, whether it's IT, ag, health science, business, whatever. And as they go through those, we are building team-based challenges that are a part of the endorsement. And that's what I built at other core classes and other schools on those teams. But it just wasn't really set up the way it was supposed to be as it is now. So those team-based challenges, the students, they have to go through a few things. I mean, they have to have an authentic problem. So say like, the local, organization needs to write a grant. The kids are actually put on to writing a grant, and that can be in civics, that can be in a history class, it can be in a science class, it can be anywhere. So they actually go through that on a team-based challenge, and then they have to think about two things, a couple of areas of skills where it's deep into that pathway. And then also there's a cross sector of skill sets that Illinois has put out there, very close to those durable skills. I really like what America Succeeds is doing with durable skills, trying to get everybody to kind of see the same thing. And our kids start to see the skills that they are working with. From that point, basically, we develop actual experiences for them. That's where the career internship program comes in. Right now, we're thinking about pulling these into a capstone class, right? So if you're in a high-end IT class, we want to experiment with, do we pull in the team-based challenge, and then like they do it, like say an IT1 class and an IT2 class, whatever that may be, then they're working for a company that they're doing some coding, they're doing some robotic work or whatever it is. In that, right now we have a course where kids go through, and that's what you saw when you came in, where it's a blended learning model where the students have release time. They go off and they do work. They do a lot more hybrid these days. So for you rural folks, man, we've got kids placed in Silicon Valley. Like they're just rural. You can do this anywhere. So if you get into these hybrid pieces where you're working from home, our kids are doing that, and they were actually working in the building too. We've got a lot of different spaces in our building. We're lucky enough to have that. But so those kids get those opportunities, and then they are self-evaluating on those skill sets, that cross-sector of competencies that Illinois gives, and their supervisor are also giving them feedback on those. And the next step that we're setting up is we're setting up a portfolio so where the kids can take it with them. So that's where we're going.
Wow. Wow, it's some really good stuff. So if I'm hearing you right, you do have some of this taking place in some of your gen ed your core subject areas, like the teaming itself.
Right now it's so the team-based challenges are setting up. So we're just trying to figure out ways that we can work with staff and students to expand that to more opportunities. So we just created a profile of a learner here, and a lot of places are doing that, right? You help a lot of districts build that with. Ours are the competencies are adaptability, communication, critical thinking, learner's mindset, and global citizen, right?
Mhm.
So those are fleshed out on our website, but they're also, I think, one of the most important things that we did here, which I've built these with other districts as well. But here, what they did is they embedded those into the mission statement. Like, so now
Yeah.
when a student walks across that stage, we want them, I mean, I don't think grades and a test score are going to be the only thing that can show that. And as a matter of fact, I think it doesn't show some of those things. So that's why we're looking at ways to build portfolios where students can take that asset and take it to wherever they go. So that's what we're looking at.
Yeah. Agreed. I do know you've got a great background on portfolios, and we're going to have you on again to talk a little
Yeah.
more in depth around that. Some of the work we've been looking at with Spike
Hmm.
View, if that's something that takes off, I think is going to be outstanding in regards,
Yeah.
especially at the high school level. But as you talk about doing some of those like design sprints and whatnot with, in classes and or just shifting as you would to a career connectedness in classrooms.
Hmm.
When I visited last week, I thought one of the things that you're outstanding at is how when your students came into class and we met, was your internship students. I really enjoyed how you stretched their thinking around real world application, right? It was very
Yeah.
organic. You had the one girl talking about some of the problems that she was seeing as as it related to her job. It wasn't problems related to the internship. She actually was talking about things that she was investing in the real world, real application of that career placement that she was in. And here we are,
Hmm.
what, 3 weeks into the school year, and she's
Yeah.
talking like that. But what I noticed, I think what you were really good at was how you were able to extend those conversations in a way that it wasn't just academic, right?
Right.
What do you, where do we go? How do we get to the location of in a general ed class that we can see our educators functioning and having those same types of conversations organically with our students? How do we get there?
You have to bring community in. You really do. We've got to lower the walls between school and community. And when I say community, it doesn't have to be immediate community. It could
Yeah.
be, somebody like this, a conversation like this. I mean, I'm sitting in a room that obviously it's amazing. It's the incubator program, which is an amazing program where the community comes in and they teach kids how to basically build a business. And there's screens everywhere. Almost everybody out there has some sort of technology where they can connect with people across the world. And I think what we need to do is to help people realize how to break down those walls. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things that Brett and I are tasked with doing here at Naperville, which again, it's funny because like I see this place and then I look at my other schools that I've worked in and great teams.
Mhm.
They're very advanced here. They have the right people in place. And I want to see that everywhere as you do. Obviously, that's why you do the work you do. Um, it, you got to get people out of their comfort zones, including myself. I mean, I feel like when you do bring that community member in, you've got to be humble as an educator. I was in a classroom of a small business management course that I taught at Oak Park River Forest High School, and we had the chief marketing officer of the Midwest for Coca-Cola walk in. Now, I'll tell you what, I was a little afraid because I was like, this is the person of a ginormous corporation who is handling basically the Midwest US operations of marketing for Coca-Cola,
Hmm.
right? Um, and we had conversations and, I just kind of like dropped my my ego and said, help me. What do these kids need to know? What do you want to see? And yeah, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. I've
Mhm.
started three
Yeah.
different businesses, and I'm teaching this management course and everything. And here's somebody coming in from corporate, and your first instinct is like, I want to hold on to what I have. But in order to move forward and to really get these authentic experiences and really to get these students and the educators in the room seeing what the connection really can be, you have to actually try connections. So they're going to make an announcement here in a minute. I don't think you can hear it. Okay, cool. So yeah, I found a quiet room. But yeah, you have to have those connections, and school really is a community place, but for some reason we've started to detach our curriculum from the community. And in many ways we got to rebuild that. So I think that's one of the main answers there.
All right, let's say this. You just gave a presentation on what you're doing at Naperville to, you must have probably 600, 700 teachers there. And a teacher comes up to you and says, I want to do that.
Yeah.
What would be your advice on 3 simple steps to be able to move to that career connected learning type approach for that teacher?
Right. I'm going to borrow Dr. Jen Sharp, who we had on the podcast, who is one of the very few, and I know we'll get to the podcast later, but very few tandem skydiving, not instructors, but evaluators, right? Females in the world. Be lazy. These are her words, and I'll explain them. Be lazy, make mistakes, and have fun.
Yes.
Right. So those are your 3 things. Now, be lazy. We unpack this, and if anybody wants to hear the podcast, it's coming out. You'll see it probably late November. But being lazy doesn't mean sitting back and doing anything. It means get out of the way of the students and get out of the way, like set the stage for learning to happen, and then let people mess up. Then go to the next step. Let people make mistakes. Let them, and then in those mistakes are those learning moments. And then basically have fun with it, right? Like we had a presentation. I'm going to go back to that Coca-Cola presentation. So we got out of their way. What our students their challenge was to create a sales kind of motivator for salespeople to whatever. I mean, it could be some of their packaging, their bottles or whatever, to increase sales. And it was a competition. So what are we going to do for a competition? One student who is now all the way into fashion merchandising and working was a senior then, and he came up with the idea of basically putting this thing together to where if they won their numbers, then they got to sit at the table at New York's, the worldwide headquarters of, actually it's in Atlanta, I think, in Coca-Cola, to sit with C-suite people and talk about sales tactics. Right? To just do that. And for a 17, 18-year-old kid to come up with that, he was on a team, but he was really driving it. The funny thing is he went through his presentation, and in the middle of the presentation, Scott, the CMO was like, yes, that's what we're looking. And you got it. There were people going after him. And you got to feel them like deflate. They're like, oh. There were 2 kids who were on a team who played the game and played the academics game. And I love when people do that. And they made one of the biggest mistakes ever. There were 3 people on the team. 2 people showed up, and guess who had the presentation? They asked me in the beginning of class, like, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, you have a C-suite person here. You're going to have to come up with something, and you're going to go. And they went, and it was awful. It was like watching a train wreck, right? And once it was done, there was the guy didn't even ask him questions. He's like, yeah, thanks. Right. Because he knew what they were doing. When those 2 walked out of the class, they just looked at me and they were like, I feel like I've been kicked in the stomach. And I'm like, thank you. And I said, I don't care. You guys will give yourself a self-evaluation, grade, whatever. I want you to remember this feeling, because what you just learned was to make sure everybody's got the presentation and everybody knows their role. And if somebody drops out of the playbook, who's going to pick it up?
Yeah.
And they looked at me and were like, you are right. They would not learn that on a test, memorizing something, or in a, just a sit and get situation.
Right.
So that was an amazing piece as well. So those 3 things. And again, I'm going to attribute them to Dr. Jen Sharp. You can look her up. She's amazing. Be lazy, make mistakes, and have some fun. And we laughed about it at the end of it. No harm, no foul, man. They learned.
That is really good advice, because, with some of my work, I tend to get into schools, observe teachers in classrooms, and even just myself, I've done this. And there's a lot of great teachers that maybe don't do this as much, but like we talked last week, we call this a little bit of that A to Z
Yeah.
versus Z to A,
Easy day.
right?
Yeah. Right.
And I see a lot of not wanting to allow our students to make those mistakes, right? And
Yeah.
that we need to step in, give more direction, give more input, give more information so they get to that solution and that answer versus
Hmm.
step back and just let them problem solve. And
Right.
kids love doing that if you can set that environment up right. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's some
I think
great
that
advice.
the key there is setting up the environment, right?
Hmm.
Kids are very afraid. I mean, it's that age group, right? You don't want to screw up in front of people, right? You just
Hmm.
don't. But once you start doing it, the first thing I usually do in a classroom is screw up in front of people, like
Yeah, yeah,
quickly. And they're like, oh, yeah, Mr. H. I'm like, you know what? I learned something. Thank you. That's what I want you guys to do. Because I think you have to model that environment. So that's a key part of this,
yeah.
no matter where you're at. You've got to get a safe environment of failure and curiosity.
Right. Yeah. Vulnerability, right? It's just
Yep.
not something many of us are comfortable with.
Hmm.
Control, as educators,
Yep.
we want to be in control. And really, it's the same thing, not only teacher to students, but also we could look at that as leadership to, right?
Yes.
Leadership to
Yes.
educators. You and I have talked a lot about this,
Yep.
trying to create a culture where, where there is that trust, not
Hmm.
threat. So
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's some great advice.
Yeah, real quick, I want to throw a
Yeah.
plug out there. So I know that we're going to have some admin. There's a guy, Craig Randall. He's a good friend of mine, and he is been reframing evaluations around that, and it's called trust-based
Mm,
observations. So take a look at that book. Just Google it. Trust-based observations by Craig Randall. We're getting away from, the old school evaluation models, which is exactly what you just mentioned.
yeah, that's great. Good advice. Um, let's talk a little bit about, I know that I believe your state has competencies, and you're doing some unique work with that in your school district around some interactive type documents and go ahead and explain kind of what you're doing, and then
Yeah,
what are you looking at doing with this information, with these documents?
right. So I think you're talking about like the building a portfolio and using AI.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, AI is a game changer. It is something where basically what we're doing is we're setting up these competencies, and my goal on the team is to really help our students when they walk across that stage and get their diploma is to understand their top three skills, right? What are their top three skills? We've had the conversation about pathway, and if they know the path they want to go down, let's go. But overall, I want a student to know what they're good at.
Mm,
I want to know what I'm good at. So what we're doing is we're building these competencies into challenges. So in a portfolio, and I'll use SpikeView as our
mhm.
go-to. They get to log experiences, and you can do this anywhere. You can do this on Google Docs or whatever. We're trying to get it to a professional place that's safe for students to actually run with it. Talk more about that in January. But what I'm working on is how to get these competencies. So you have a problem-solving competency, right? We're teaching students what problem-solving looks like, what it is, and why do people want problem solvers? And could be corporations, could be, mom and pop stores, it could be, organizations, whatever. Why do people like problem solvers? And then how can you show it, right?
Mhm.
And so what I've done is I've taken a lot of different pieces, throw it into an AI text piece, right? So ChatGPT, Google Gemini, wherever you're comfortable. And I had it script out like a 2-minute video to describe those three things, right? What is problem solving? Why do companies like it? And then how can you show it, right? And we're using the STAR method, situation, the task, the action, and the result. We want students to kind of get that in their head, but you can use it a lot of different ways. So then what I do is I put that script into an AI video maker. We're using Synthesia, and it actually creates it with an AI up front, and it talks through it, and I manipulate it a little bit because I'm a broadcast journalism major at heart. Do a lot of the editing and those types of things and put it together. But now we have a couple of assets. So we have one pagers where if a student wants to choose problem solving, they can see it written out. They can also click on that video that has a talking person on it and it has text and everything where it is explaining to them if they're a visual person like myself, and then they take it and then they reflect on it and put it into their own portfolio that they can use for jobs, college, whatever, right? Useful stuff. And that's kind of where we're pulling in AI to really help us do that quickly. And I got to tell you, Scott, I've already iterated these videos. There are 10 competencies, cross-sector competencies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already into my third iteration of each video, and I've only been doing it for a week.
Wow.
So if you can imagine the amount of time it used to take you, I know I have a deeper knowledge in video, but something like that used to take 3, 4, 5 hours to do. And now I've got it down to about 15 minutes. So
Wow.
yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing right now. And, to kind of go back into that portfolio, we really want students to have an asset that they have built, right? In education, when you go through work-based learning and all that, I can't be the person to give them a grade on something that I don't see them doing because there is a professional out there working with them. And they have to do that. So then how can you help that young person who's learning harness what they've learned and then be able to scale that to share with others and also to scale their learning when they come across another problem-solving challenge. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I can see a real crossover even because you're using your state competencies, but boy, with that, this would match really nice with portraits of a graduate, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and could really. Do you have any ideas on how you could stem, this into even classrooms at all?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually building right now because we do have the team-based challenges. And if you actually Google ISBE and then team-based challenges, you'll see the state has actually just put this out about a week ago, where they put in all the different pathways, but some ideas that you can do a team-based challenge, whether you're in an agriculture class, you're in a science class, or it's on pathways, but yeah, it kind of just helps you walk through it. And I think that's where it needs to start. We want our students, I mean, they're coming in and we're still helping them build some portfolio and resume. Some students have it, some don't. We want to be very intent on students building that resume and or portfolio through their career, especially 9 through 12 and even earlier.
Yeah, good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Let's shift to the how here towards the end of our podcast. Boy, this is a tough one, right? If it was you and I and a few others that we know pretty well that are close to us, we could probably climb over this mountain and back maybe. But right, we're dealing with a lot of educators, a lot of people. Seems like we're really still a little bit stuck in that achievement-based approach. A lot on our plate, a lot on our educators' plate, man. Every time I get into a classroom and I'm involved with teachers and watching what they do, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. But so how do we transform? How do we do this? How do we shift?
Yeah, I think you have to get your playmakers, your curious educators, right? We're in an interesting time in education. There's really not a lot of people in the funnel coming down, and I kind of talked about this yesterday as Allie and I were kind of unpacking one of our guests. You really, I mean, that's a good thing if you're already in education, right?
Hmm.
If there's no funnel, then all right, this is a little taboo to say, but you know what? They're not going to get rid of you. So try some things, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, have some fun, right? I think that, in order to kind of turn the Titanic, if you will, a little bit more, the younger, I won't say younger, but you're more curious educators who want to do something but never had the either like I don't want to say guts, but like, they just feel hesitant about doing something different. Um, like those are the people you need to capture in your building, right? I don't care if it's one or two or 10 people. And really just kind of having those conversations with people and say, hey, what if, right? How can I
Right.
help? Band together. One of the things that I would say, especially if you're the core four, and by core four, which is kind of an outdated term, but we still use as math, science, English, and history. Reach out to your electives and also reach out
Hmm.
to your special ed departments. Special ed departments have been changing the game of education for years because number one, they get the money. It's highly funded, and number two, they have to, right? Their clients are a little bit different there and they're very individualized, right? So, but all our clients are individualized. And I think that's what we're trying to get to where we can help people build to the best of their ability. So when you're looking like if you're a math teacher, one of the things we were working with actually at Stag is I was beginning to work closely with a history teacher where we were taking psychology and sales in
Mm.
business, and we were just
Wow.
crossing them over. You can do it with art projects. You can do it with band. You can do it with sports, all these different things. There's a lot of different crossovers there, but it takes, just one or two people to reach out and to try something. And obviously, if you're an admin, listen to this, give people, you don't, I know we're pressed on time. You don't have to give them time. You just got to give them the okay, like open the
Right.
door and say, hey, go try this. What do you want to do? One of the most unhappy things that I've ever been in education. I don't go negative, but I do not want to be this person. And he was an amazing math department chair when I was working at one of the schools, came to me. And I think I told you this while you were here, is he handed me a packet for math, and he was the department chair. And he's like, I just want to let you know, like, this is what they're telling us we have
Hmm.
to teach the
Yeah.
students. And it's more test scores. And I get it. I get it. And he left me with a horrifying statement that he said, I wish I would have pushed buttons when I was younger. And this was his
Yeah.
last year before he retired. Um, yeah, I don't want to be that. And I don't think any educator really wants to be that. So it does take those curiosity people and just start building with them. Get traction anywhere. It can be one small itty
Hmm.
bitty piece, right? That you're working maybe with, your town government or an organization or whatever. Talk to one of your parents and see if they have any kind of side projects to work on, and ask questions. That we like to, and I'm guilty of this as well. As educators, we like to be stubborn and like to be in our own world. We are kind of entrepreneurs in our own right. But once you become a little bit humble and ask, hey, what if, ask that more, and I think that's where you start to build. You and I know, though, we want it
Oh,
faster.
yeah. Yeah. A big
So
time. I like how what Kevin Fleming says about some of this. And it kind of goes to the root of this system itself and really having that autonomy of your system, your
yeah,
educational system. How does he say it? He says, um, how you define the goal defines how you play the game.
yeah,
So really, what's the goal that you're putting out in front of you as a school district?
yeah,
Where are you pointing the nose of your ship? What's important to you? What's your fundamental purpose? Some of what we've talked about, even on my podcast with you, is what are we defining as being important out in front
yeah.
of us? And do we
Well,
allow, our educators to have that green light and go ahead and move forward, experimenting?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that caution, I think, is out there for educators sometimes around this. But
Yeah. You know what I think it is? I think it's actually, and I've done this at a lot of schools, and unfortunately, some schools will get to a point where it looks good on paper, but it's really not.
yeah,
There's not, it's pie in the sky stuff. There's not a system or an environment to make things happen. So again, one of the things at 203, I'll read the mission statement right now. The mission of Naperville Community Unit School District 203 is to empower students to develop a learner's mindset, demonstrate adaptability, communicate effectively, think critically, and become global citizens.
right,
And that is skills, right? Those are
right.
skills. Skills aren't always, I've been in rooms where high ups have said this profile of a graduate or portfolio of a graduate or whatever they want to call it can be fleshed out on an SAT. And I left that room. I couldn't, I
Mhm.
cannot be in there. Right. And I get it, but people have their blinders on, unfortunately. So if you're leading a school and you embed something like this in your mission statement, back it up,
Yeah,
back it up. And it's hard. This is not easy work. But like you and I were talking about before, jumping on here, it really is, it's a challenge, and you get people who love to accept challenges and love to be out in the
mhm.
front. And then you give them the ability to do their best jobs and then celebrate the wins and then take a look at the deltas and try to figure out, okay, that's cool, you messed up, we learned this, rather than, going, at people and saying, yeah, you did this wrong. And, you're not gonna, if you fail in front of students and you're building something, what better way to learn if everybody's humble and understands that that is the way you learn,
Right,
right? And if we continue to set the stage for perfection is the only way, we're just going to continue. There's going to be more and more, you know, uh, pet dogs in here for us to just calm people down. People's stress levels are going to be up. So that's the challenge, is to take your mission and to really do what your mission says.
right.
And you have to ask yourself that question over and over again. And I feel lucky enough that I'm in a district where our superintendent Dan Bridges is hell bent on this, and because his own family of combined kids with five,
Mhm.
they've all went different places, and he said that the first time, like he kind of presented to us as we were onboarding, and I was
Mhm.
like, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
he gets it.
yep,
That's what you
yeah,
need, right? The it part
yeah.
of it. You got to get the it.
And even if, like, if you're in a district where people don't get it,
Yeah,
go do it anyway.
yeah,
Do it
right.
anyway,
I like
right?
it.
So, yeah,
I love the coaching advice.
yeah,
So, all right, as we come to the end here a little bit, let's talk about a couple things quickly. Tell me a little bit, get a plug in here for Disrupt podcast.
yeah,
Go ahead. You and Allie, tell us a little bit
yeah,
how you can,
100%.
where you can find that.
Yeah, you just Google Disrupt Education. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, disrupteducation.co, or if you just Google my name, Peter Hostrawser, you see peterhostrawser.com. They're all on there. They're pretty much anywhere out there in the world. I literally, Scott, started this podcast in 2016 because I was angry.
Oh, well.
And I felt like my hands were tied, and a lot of us educators will have side gigs, and things to just kind of mentally help us get through what we got to get through. And we are warriors, man. This is not an easy place to be. And I will tell you though, it's worth it. So when we started the podcast, I just started asking kids, how would you change school? Like, I'm tired of it. You guys don't like school. And this was in 2016. And you see the early ones are students. I just interviewed them, and they were like 10-minute interviews. And then it evolved. And then about 2 years ago, Allie Privet, who left the game of education in the classroom and is now a tandem skydiving instructor,
Mhm.
which is a wild journey. She used to teach chemistry, which is my most hated subject in high school. And as I was having conversations with her, I was like, I would have loved you as a teacher because she did some of the things that we talked about today. And we just interview a lot of people. Obviously, you're on the people who are doing the work. A lot of people who are going to come up in this series, like Dan Gonzalez, Brooke Rice, Kevin Fleming, Sylvester. And what I found was a community of people who thought like me. And so Allie is in it to, really kind of give people the other perspective of, hey, you don't have to be in the classroom to be an educator. And I'm with my lens in the classroom. So it's been a ride, 350 episodes. We're nearing about 200,000 downloads. It's catching fire. So a lot of great things coming up.
Yeah, I love it. And I love how you do a follow-up after the guest with another podcast, which is really cool. Tell Ellie, I'm not sure if I agree with a couple of her takes on what I said, but I think we can air that out next time I'm on. But
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. Hey, one thing I really want to throw out there, and I know you're committing to this, is that, the future is clear. Teach Like It's 2045, the unconference that we're throwing together here in April 29th, 30th, and May 1st. I'm super excited about the fact that you're going to help us pull this together, that we're going to design this together. Yourself, Nate from CAPS, a few other people to pull together almost like a design sprint in itself for 2.5 days. I really appreciate the fact that you're committing to that. We're super excited at CESA 2 to be able to pull this thing together. It's a stem from our webcast series. Our goal is to pull together a very interactive approach to a conference around this systematic change, right? Where we need to see mindset shift. So the great work that people like yourself that we're trying to do in our schools can really take off. And then also move into potentially what we're looking at in the summer is a symposium or an unconvention, if we call it, where people are going to come in and we're going to pull our sleeves up, roll our sleeves up, and actually get after it. So I really appreciate the opportunity to work with you on that.
Yeah, I'm very excited because I like the lens of it. You've disrupted the conference, which I really like. I've been to a lot of different ones out there as you have, and to kind of take the winning pieces of each of those to get tangible outcomes, to get people together to where you're going to walk away where you're not only going to have ideas, but you're going to have structures and people in place that you've helped create, and you become, a part of building this to where you can act on it. And there's not only a lot of knowledge that is going to be there, but there's a lot of motivation. There's a lot of ether is what I call it, like people just getting excited about it. And I'm really excited about it. I know, like, at the end of a school year, one of the things that a lot of people they'll feel like, oh, I may be kind of burnt out or whatever. At the end of the day, when Allie and I do a lot of our podcasts, I've taught a full day, worked a full day, done my hour commute to and from and all this. And I can tell you it's 7, 8 p.m. You're excited. And that's what this conference is going to do at the end of the year. It's going to be, all right, this happened. Now what? And I can't wait to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. I appreciate the help. So one final last question, if you don't mind, is, our tag is Teach Like It's 2045. What do you feel education is going to look like 2045?
Extremely personal, and a lot of coaching, less sit and get. Knowledge is going to be at so many different places. It already is. And students are going to be able to go deeper, faster. And schools are going to be communities, and vice versa. I see the landscape changing to where the learning environment is not in four walls with desks and rows. It's going to be out and about. And the transition from the academic part in primary to authentic experiences is going to be way more seamless than it is now.
I agree. It needs to be, right, Peter? It needs to be.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time with us today. Give us real quick, how can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out, network?
Sure. Yeah. phostrawser@gmail.com. That's my email. Look me up. Let's connect on LinkedIn. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. Also peterhostrawser.com. There's a place where you can contact me there as well. And I'm happy to help. This work is my why, and I love doing it.
Really appreciate you having coming along with us today, Peter. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
As we depart, remember the future is clear. Take care, everybody.
See you guys.